All right, welcome back to the Caffaro Way. My name is Johnny Caffaro. We got a special guest today, Dr. Brian Cohen out of Ohio, and I'm excited to have him share his story. And I appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think people will believe us, but you called me 30 minutes ago and you said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, I'm available now. Let's do this.
And I was like shocked. I was like, okay, let's do this. And I love the spontaneity. I love being able to get this conversation going. I think you have such an appealing story and how much you do to give back to the community. And let's go back to the really beginning. Like, what made you want to become a surgeon?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's heard me talk about this, it's the same story. It hasn't changed in 35 years. I grew up in Long Island,
Okay.
in a high school. Into high school, it was kind of a mixed. It was not a lot of minorities, but just not. I'm of Jewish faith, and
Yeah.
there were a lot of non-Jewish, and we mixed, but we didn't mix. Like we mixed on the athletic field,
Yeah.
but outside of like everything else, outside of the athletics, you just didn't mix.
I mean, my dad's from the Bronx, New York, and my mom's from Brooklyn. So it's exactly, I mean, I have
Yeah,
stories of that aspect. Like they part ways after the field.
exactly. And that's why sports is so great. We could talk about that later, but I always enjoyed working on cars. My first car was a Triumph TRC convertible,
Okay.
and it's one of those cars that you got to change the oil, you got to change the spark plugs, you got to work on it because
Yeah.
it just won't work. So I wanted to do shop, and that just wasn't something that a Jewish kid did at my high school. You weren't that wasn't the football field, that wasn't the lacrosse field, that wasn't the wrestling mat. That was
Yeah.
separate. So I didn't, but I always had this affinity for cars, and I always thought I'd be a mechanic at some point. But going through high school, I was better in science and math, and I wasn't as good as in English, and it kind of made me feel like, well, maybe I'll go into medicine. And that's kind of when I first started thinking I'm going to go into medicine. Now, I didn't know anything about medicine in high school, and I didn't know anything about medicine in college, but it was just more of, this is what I think I want to do. And then I was like, well, you know what? I'll be an actuary just in case, so I'll do a lot of math classes. And then when I didn't do well in some math class, I was like, well, I'll just be a doctor. I can't be an actuary. Yeah. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
No, it's a great thing.
but that's kind of where, I just really enjoy just looking at a problem, trying to fix it, and
Love it.
I'm sure there's a lot of orthopedic surgeons out there that probably have a similar story about, enjoying to use their hands on different projects and then going to the next level.
Yeah, no, I think I mean, I've been in the industry a lot less than you, but I say my whole life because of my hip replacement. Started out 5 years old, but a lot of the surgeons, I mean, they're an architect. They love wanting to build something, or they want to be able to wood shaping, wood carving, and all this different stuff, and they want to be able to fix stuff with their hands. And then they kind of have an incident or something that goes along the lines that they want to go help people. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've been following your story and how much you do for the community and how much you do for that. But I want to go back to the story where there were some moments that you had a pretty hard kind of pill to swallow with one of your employers and what happened there and how you've been, like, you put your heart and soul into something and it gets taken away. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, the first thing is, like you said, I'm in Ohio. So I grew up in Long Island. I went to med school at Mount Sinai in New York City. Not only med school, but residency. So 9 years on the Upper East Side. I
Yeah.
love Manhattan. I love what Manhattan offers. One of my favorite things growing up, well, not growing up, but at that point in my life was rollerblading down Fifth Avenue with my brother, who's 4 years younger than me, and he was living in the city. We both have our headphones on. We're not talking to each other, but we're just listening to some jam, and we're just going in and out of the foot traffic on Fifth Avenue. And we would skate from 96 and Park all the way down to Astor Place in the Village, and we'd get our haircut at Astor Place. And that was a great day, just to be able to go through that hustle and bustle. Nobody's going too fast in the car, so you're not going to get hit hard. May get bumped, but you're not going to get run over. And then, and then I did my fellowship at Rush in Chicago. And once again, Chicago's a great city. The best thing there was sitting on the beach during the air show and watching these jets scream over the buildings. It's just a different kind of scenery to see these air shows with the buildings right there. But then, I got a cold call. It was like Christmas time in 1999, my fellowship year, sports medicine at Rush, and they were looking for 2 orthopedic surgeons to start a new practice in Chillicothe, Ohio. Now, I definitely didn't know where Chillicothe was, but I probably could tell you that I would have lost the bet if I could find Ohio on a map.
Yeah,
at that time.
for sure.
Yeah, but I'd done fellowship, I'd done residency, I'd worked for $36,000 a year, and this was a job opportunity. The signing bonus was like 40 grand, which at that time was a ton of money. It was guaranteed $300,000 a year for 2 years, and I was just like, well, I could, and I'm just coming out, and I didn't really have, I had offers in New York and Chicago, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do, and I figured, well, I'll go. I had a lot of student loans, $100,000 in student loans, and I figured, this would be a really smart thing to do to try to start paying off my debt, but also get experience. And I flew into Columbus, Ohio, and anybody who knows Columbus, is 270 is the big loop around Columbus. And I was never used to these loops, in New York. We go, the Long Island Expressway goes one way, or the other way. You don't pass the same exit twice.
Yeah.
And I'm on this loop passing the same exit twice. So I'm already lost my first day there. But yeah, it was a health system they wanted to start hiring doctors. So you can either have an employed model, or they can set you up in a private practice model. And, not being from Ohio and starting out fresh, I didn't feel it would be a good thing to
go straight into private practice.
Yeah. Just because I was in the middle of nowhere, I don't know how long I'd be there. And,
hold on, before we start, is there a personal life? Are you married? Do you have kids at this time?
At this point in time, it's the year 2000. I'm engaged.
Okay.
My fiance, stayed in New York when I went to Chicago, because Chicago was 1 year. And then, so we're doing the long distance, and then we're going to move together to Ohio and then start our lives.
Okay.
And there's a lot of, this brings, you start talking about some of this stuff, you just remember shit that you just like, holy cow, I forgot all about that. Yeah. But anyway, so, they wanted 2 orthopedic surgeons. The attractiveness of this job was a couple of things. First of all, they were finishing a brand new building, and the bottom floor was going to be for orthopedics, and they were going to let you design it however you want to. So it was just dirt and wall, and not even walls, dirt and girders. So that was the first thing that was like, okay, you have some input. And then the other thing is that the hospital had an orthopedic group that was private that wanted to do a joint venture on a surgery center with the hospital. And this goes back about 5 years before we got there. But the hospital decided that they didn't have enough volume to move more, to add ORs. And the orthopedic group said, well, we're doing it anyway. So they pulled out all their orthopedic outpatient cases from this hospital that didn't have orthopedics, basically, except for, the inpatient stuff. And so they were in a financial mess. So there was a lot of need for orthopedics. And then the other part was that this group was very selective on who they treated, not only insurances, but they would not see anybody who had had surgery by somebody else. So there was a whole revision population of whatever, rotator cuff, ACL, whatever's out there. So it was just like a very fertile orthopedic ground to start. And I talked to my co-fellow at the time, Dr. Mike D'Amato. He's now in Minnesota. And I said, Mike, you don't got a job. I don't got a job. They want 2. And, this is what they're offering. And this is what, we build the office. I said, let's do it. So, him and I started that practice as the first 2 employed orthopedic surgeons in September of 2000. Wow. So this September will be 25 years that I've lived in Ohio.
That's crazy.
And as I've been told, 25 years in Ohio, you become an Ohioan.
Okay.
Got a couple more days.
Love that. Yeah. And that's a crazy story. I mean, a lot of people don't go to Ohio from New York, right?
No, that's not. Yeah. And like I said, I was one of those people that it was New York and California. And
that's all you knew.
Yeah. I didn't know.
I mean, there's a crazy thing is with my dad. I mean, we moved from New York to Ephraim, Utah, which is like the smallest podunk. And my mom, there was not even a stoplight, and she's from Brooklyn, and she's like, where are we? Like, this is crazy. I mean, pursuing his passions and becoming a football coach was really cool for him. But I mean, New Yorkers, we were just watching the Green Book last night and talking about the Bronx and all the Italians and all that stuff. It's just funny. It's just like they don't know much about anything outside back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, look,
you don't need to.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there are bad people everywhere, but there are good people everywhere also. And that's like something that you learn over time.
Yeah.
But I mean, some of my dearest friends are the people I grew up with, and
absolutely. Fortunately,
I talk to them. I don't see much of them, but just talking and catching up is always, it brings back those memories, just like we're talking. And I'm thinking about, we were talking about, my personal life at the time. So I had a fiance, and I needed to have her have a job. Like, I couldn't have her move here, not have a job, because she would she was a true New Yorker. Her father was a firefighter. Her uncle was a firefighter. I mean, they were like, Queens, New York, full on, family gatherings. I mean, everything's family, every meal, even at breakfast, lunch, every meal. But so I had to fight with these people to get, because all these health systems have these rules. You can't work with your significant other or whatever the rule is. And it was a battle just to get her a job. But they did acquiesce, and it was good for a while, and then it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like all things go.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's everything goes and then it comes away. So have you always been really good at marketing? How did you learn how to market and brand yourself? Is that like from the beginning in 2000 because it was such a new practice, or like?
I'll be honest with you. Up until I was let go in April of 21, I did no marketing. I did no social media. I was very community focused and very generous with the things I did, similar to what I do now. But I didn't do it as a doctor. I did it as a health system. So anything I did it under the the name of the Adina name. Yeah, just because I was a team player. I've been very fortunate in I guess stumbling into things like so in 2000 we started our practice. In 2004, the beginning of 2004, my partner at the time, he leaves, and it's just me. And I'm like, what do I do now? I'm not from Ohio, and my fiance was gone by now, so I was on my own.
Let's talk about that. Hold on for a second. What happened there? Like it just didn't work out, right? Like Ohio.
Busy. Good people do bad things, and she never adjusted. I guess that's the best. She just never adjusted, and she would make trips home, and it's sad to say, but one day I got a call from somebody in her family that says that she's cheating on you. She comes home, she cheats on you. And and they're like, you can't tell her. We told you. And I was like, wait a second. She's flying in, and I can't tell her you told me this. And they're like, no, she would kill us. It would like destroy the family. Wow. I just said fine. So she comes in, and we had just like every relationship that's not working, you fight. And when there's a ring involved, the girl always says, take this back. You don't care. And every time she did that up until that point, I said, no, this is where I want to be. I want to be with you. Yeah. And then this time she came home and she gave me the ring back. And I said, fine. I said, I think you're right. And I took it. And she was shocked. Right. And sure enough, the next day I left for work. We didn't talk. The next thing I'm sitting with my partner. It's like, I forgot what year it was, probably 2002. And we're sitting in my office, and I'm like, I'm telling him what's going on, and like she has, and I'm a very sharing person. I'm like, she has access to all the money. And sure enough, I called the bank, and she had gone and pulled out as much money as they would let her, and she had got on a plane and she left. Wow. And that was that. Yeah.
Man, I'm sorry. I had a similar story, but not. I mean, that game where like, here's the ring, you don't love me, and then I'm like, okay, and then like. They're like, oh, I love you, never mind. And like, I had that engagement, and it was terrible, toxic, right? I mean,
and she did, she did say, and this time I would have normally, any other day I would have normally acquiesced and given her, said, you're right, let's do this, let's work on it. And she came back one time, but she was in bad shape. I was very upset with her family. She was sick. I mean, she just had stopped eating and depressed, and honestly, I haven't talked to her in 20. I've been here for 25 years, so probably 20. Since she left, I haven't really talked to her. I hope she's well. I don't have any ill feelings towards her. It was somebody that I had met that was one of those love at first sights. You're like, wow, I want to. That's the person.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I mean, it takes a big person to be able to forgive and forget. Because if we hold on to those attachments and those emotions, they're going to drag us down. And if we say, woe is me, we're never going to heal in that aspect. There's a time and a place, and happened for a reason, and you grew as a person, and you knew what you don't want after that. But if you hold that bitterness and that anger, you're always going to be able to like just have that pain in your chest, or every time you think about something, you're going to think about negativity. But for you to forgive that and like wish her well is huge. And I try to do that with everybody, and I hope everybody does that with me, because I mean, I've made mistakes in my life and I've owned it, and I hope people don't wish me ill. And just like there was a time and a season that I was struggling.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It's probably one of the hardest things to do is to, first of all, recognize your role in why things didn't work. I mean, it's not her fault. I mean, I wasn't as attentive to, she was going through a tough time. I didn't recognize it. I was trying to build a practice. I thought, I got to build this practice so that we could have a future together. And she's like, probably like, what am I doing here? I have no friends here. My fiance's never around, so, I mean, I understand that I had as much responsibility and, the cheating thing to me is it's not as big of a deal because I don't think it means as much to anybody as the pain that you feel,
Yeah.
I don't really feel like, and look, if she was in love with that person, great. I mean, if I'm not the one, I'm not the one. I'd rather, save me all the trouble, but yeah, I think if you can identify the problems, work through them mentally in your head or however you work through things. And then, like you said, get past it because holding on to that disappointment, that anger, that hurts you more than the actual episode because you carry it for years.
I mean, I listen, I made a mistake. I cheated and I mean, it was bad, painful, hurtful, shameful. And it hurt probably, I mean, not going to say that I don't know the emotion, but like I was carrying some of that shame and guilt. And I was like, man, like, what did I do? Like so heavy in my heart. But then like, I had to forgive myself and be like, okay, listen, I did something wrong, but I'm not wrong. Like I'm not a bad person or I'm not like something happened and it's not the person. It doesn't define who I am.
Right.
For a really long time, I sat with this and like, man, I'm terrible. I'm like all these different things, but I had to reframe the I am because the I am is not ever bad or terrible. It's just different experiences come into our life and either you're going to level up or level down. And I was leveling down for a little bit. And then I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be a part of that. I want to always be in light and truth and be able to just protect my integrity. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look, I've followed you since I jumped on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, and I've been very impressed with how you heal out in the open. I mean, it's not, look, even sitting here now, it's not easy to share some of this crap.
No.
It does stir up the emotion and does stir up the, what if, and it does stir up, what happens is, I mean, she won't watch this, but what happens if she does? And now her mom and her family's gonna be like, you outed us.
You shouldn't have said anything.
25 years later, you outed us. And I'm going to get a visit from Uncle Vinny.
That Vinny the Bull.
Yeah. But but like I said, watching you and how you've kind of shared what you're going through. I mean, everybody learns from everybody else's experience. That's why I think it's so important to do the, 10 years ago, I'd be like, if you would have called me up, I'd be like, look, I'm busy. I don't have time to, who cares? Nobody cares about my story, but just listen to everybody else's story. I mean, shit, and most of them orthopedic surgeons or sales reps, in our circle. I mean, some people have been through a lot of, it's tough, and you just look at your own life. You just, you thank God for the things that you have that are positive, and you just do what you do.
100%. I think the biggest thing is that when you start healing, your story or experience is truly going to help somebody else.
Right.
You are going through that, not just for yourself, but for somebody else that needs to hear it, that needs to know that they're not alone, that they're not like the thoughts in my head were saying like, you're cheating. Don't tell anybody. No one's going to love you. No one's going to help you. No one's going to support you. But if I can tell somebody, hey, listen, that is so farther from the truth. Like you will have help. No one's going to disown you. Like if my story can just help somebody else get out of the loop that I was in, then it's all worth it. Right.
Yeah. And that's how I feel about some of the professional, you talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but some of the professional stuff I've been through. I mean, you dedicate, and I know you've been through some stuff too. You dedicate yourself to being the best you could be for, we all work for somebody to some extent, but for your employer, and look, I've only been employed. I'm like 25 years and I'm an employed doctor, and I dream about this private practice life and this autonomy that I may once get, which is just always just a little bit out of reach. But, you do the best you can and you think you're doing the right thing. And then, somebody just, it either doesn't meet their expectation or they're afraid of what you're becoming in an employed model, in the sense that, you're not an individual and people are starting to look at you as an individual. What's that going to do to me, who's the individual, the administrator, Yeah.
I think that even has to go past work settings as well too. It's like when you're succeeding in life, people kind of look at you like, oh, what are we doing here? Like he's going over the top. Like we need to put him down a little bit. We need to push him down, because then there's a target on your back. Like people want to see you succeed, and people also don't want to see you succeed. It's kind of sad. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. And I've been, you just said it. There's a lot of jealousy, specifically in the stuff that that we do. I know that on the rep side, there's jealousy, whether
Oh
it's the
yeah.
relationship with a doc or the business that you got with a doc or a hospital. But, even people that you're work with and not for, they should be happy with your success. But there's this, they just,
Absolutely.
if you're that successful, you're doing something wrong
Yeah.
in their mind. And look, I've been subject to significant investigations because people thought there's no way you can see that many people, do that many surgeries, and be compliant. And I've had hundreds of surgeries reviewed where they found one that fell out of compliance. And then that wasn't enough, because that's not how Medicare looks at it. You have to take 100 consecutive cases and look at it in a certain way, and then that's how Medicare will, But I've been through that, not knowing that it was even started, and came out on the right side of it. But I think if you're true to who you are and you do it the right way, you can still be successful. I mean, the rules don't keep you down; they keep you honest, I guess.
100%. I mean, like, that's where it's like, I always want to live in integrity and truth. And I was like, I love that you have my book back behind you. That's awesome. I mean, wrote the book and wanted to get out the podcast and wanted to share the story in the right way and like start transformational coaching. And like, people I see now, like, it's really cool, because I always had a chip on my shoulder, because I always felt like people, because of my braces on my hips, and I always had to prove wrong to people. And then people did show me their nasty side and like take advantage of my kindness. And so, but like, it's really cool to see people, as I'm being more my authentic self and more in integrity, that a lot of people do want to see me succeed. They want to see me be able, because I'm actually helping people along the way. Like, I'm not trying to do, like, if you would have talked to me 4 or 5 years ago, I was all out of ego. And I was like, look at me, watch me, I'm going to do this, because I was hurt. Like, my employer hurt me in a sense, because I was doing so well that nobody, like, they like cut the legs underneath me, because I was becoming too big of a person over the brand.
Right.
And it
Same
just
thing.
like,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like a very similar story where it's like, hey, I'm just trying to move the needle forward and try to help people. Like, if I'm doing it wrong, tell me.
And look, watching you do, I mean, it makes me more vulnerable or open about the things that I've been through. I just sleep better knowing that. I think less about what I share. I don't scrutinize it. Look, if I share something that you don't like, that's fine.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And it didn't hurt, it's not for everybody, but the people that connect, like you and I and all those other people that we connect with, it's because we're all in that same kind of mindset that, you can do great things and you can still be vulnerable and talk about, what went wrong or where you didn't reach your potential in your mind and how you dealt with that,
Yeah. I think it's huge when you find your tribe, they'll back you up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of that. When you're speaking your authentic truth, people that are matching your same frequency or same vibe will come in. And like, I love what you just said. If you don't like what I have to say, then I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Yeah. I'm still going to speak what I need to say. And then, I mean, some people will say, like, why do you keep posting your kids online? I was like, because I want to tell my story about my children and how I'm raising them. I mean,
when you do that, it makes me, think about my kids.
100%. And I see, I mean, how such a good dad you are and how you and I bounce back and forth between that and being able to put yourself in that. So it's like when I was going through my really hard time and I was lacking of not being a father, and I stood back to see what I was doing wrong, and knowing that they were not getting the presence of their father was really tearing at me. And I was at the lowest low, and my daughter, like, I didn't have any money in my bank account, and she just lost her tooth, and I couldn't find any money in the house, and I found like $1.25 or $2 and put it under her bed. And then the next morning she brought it to me. She said, "Here, Dad, I think you need this more than I do." And she's 7 years old. And I was like, wow, like, our children are so powerful and they see how much love they can bring. And it just took me, it's like, I need to be more present with these children and be able to raise them in different ways.
Dude, that story got me.
Gets me every time.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I mean, I think we exchange this. Probably the greatest thing we'll do is be dads. At the end of the day, whatever you do, whatever I do, being a dad is going to be the greatest opportunity we have, and you want to make the most of it because it's going to have the most impact. Because when we're gone, nobody's going to care how many hip replacements I did. Did I do anterior? Did I do posterior? Did I do do mobility? Nobody's going to give a shit about that. They're going to care about what's my daughter doing. what's,
Yeah.
or my daughters, what are they, what are they into? Are they, because that's where
Yep.
they come. So.
Yeah. I think that's the legacy we're trying to live, is how we act in front of them so they can be able to be better children. Right?
Yeah.
And they don't care how many surgeries dad do. They don't care how many airplanes that I've been on. They don't care how many surgeries or ORs I've been in. They just want to know if I'm going to be at their basketball game, or you know if I'm going to be at the park, or hey dad, are you here this Thursday so we can come to your house, or do we have to wait another couple of days?
Yeah.
Made it a priority in my life to make sure that like they are number one, and nothing else goes past that. And I think it's powerful. And I'm just trying to show people that like our job titles, our bank account, or anything that's in it is nothing compared to being a dad or a mom.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and look, if you get that message across as well as you are, I mean, then you've achieved.
Yeah. No, I'm excited.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit. I mean, so 2005, everything's going well.
So 2004, I'm about to be a solo partner. Okay. And I'm making this decision in my head. Do I stay or do I get out of Dodge before, because it's a good time to leave.
Yeah.
My partner's leaving. Well, the New Yorkers left. So what do you expect? When we met with the CEO when we first started, he sat us down. He said, "Don't you New Yorkers think you're going to come in here and take all our money?" And we were just like, whatever. We're just trying to practice orthopedics. But back then, all the charts were on paper,
Okay. Oh, wow.
I just found myself in the chart room, and we had a chart room that was like the size of 4 or 5 examiners. It was huge, and it was full of papers, full of charts. And I just said to myself, I said, these are people. Each chart's a person, one of our patients. And if I leave, they can't go across the street because those guys won't see them. So they're going to have to leave. They're going to have to leave, the area, which is a half hour to a 45-minute drive each way. Or an hour. And I just made a decision. I said, you know what, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna see this through. And we had come up with a concept. We didn't start it. We were starting it. That basically the way to grow orthopedics, in my opinion, was to recruit surgeons. 1 or 2 per specialty. And in a town of 25,000, you probably just need 1. You don't need 2 joint guys, 2 sports guys. And then once you get all the subspecialties covered so that everybody can be taken care of locally, you hire non-operative sports medicine docs. So we had 8 non-operative sports medicine docs that would go to all the different facilities. We used to go to facilities outside of our health system because they needed coverage. And all the surgeries were done at the health campus. But, because I did hips, knees, shoulders, I had a bigger net that when the sports guy saw something, I can handle a lot of the stuff that they would see. Yeah. And it was just a way to, improve your surgical volume, but not see the day-to-day stuff that, that surgeons don't necessarily want to see or see. The sports guys do that. So I would say, when I started, I'd say 10% of my practice was surgical. When we were at our height, I'd say 80% of my practice was surgical because everybody went through the sports guys. They triaged everybody.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then we grew the practice from myself to 30 providers, including, nurse. Yeah. Yeah. It was a beautiful thing.
You went from 1 to 30?
1 to 30. And it was but we merged with pain management. We merged with neurology. So we had other subspecialties, but it was just a beautiful, it was just, everything was working. And then somebody thought that it shouldn't work. And that's, and then they started, nitpicking and tearing it apart. So, we had convinced the health system, and I had been trying to do it for years, to build a specialty hospital in orthopedics because we were losing a lot of business to New Albany, where Lombardi and Keith Barron's are, and, the big guys. But if we had a specialty hospital, we felt like we could keep some of that, even though we were super busy. And then, one day it was in May of 2020, they sat me in an office. The president of the medical group called me in, and mind you, it's COVID. They're not, the administrators aren't working. And I hadn't talked to this doctor who I've known for the 20 years that I've been there for like 6 months. And the last time I talked to him was all about his knee replacement that I had done around that time.
Hold up.
Yeah.
So you did his knee replacement.
I did his knee replacement.
He calls you in 6 months later.
Yeah, 6 months after he had me sign a contract to be the medical director. So I'd been doing the job for 20 years, but no contract. Now they wanted to make it formal. And he calls me in. He said, I've decided that we need to go in a different direction, and I want you to resign. And when I walk in, it's the head of HR and the vice president of the medical group. So, just out of the blue, he sends me a text, I need to meet with you. and I walk in, I'm just like, this is not going to be good.
Oh my
And I said to
gosh.
him, I said, look, I said, I'm not resigning. And I said to him, I said, I don't think this is your idea. He's like, well, there's a lot of drive-by business. I said, yeah, but look, we're building a $70 million facility. I said, I have expanded this group to 30 people. I've gone into all these different markets that the health system was never in, that I was invited to by those other hospitals to be part of. And then I said, I'm not resigning. I said, I don't think this is your decision. I said, I think it comes from above you. And I said, I'm not resigning. And he said, take the weekend to think about it. And I said, whatever. And we were supposed to meet again. And then he had written a note that he had asked me to step down. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. So it was,
I didn't know that part of the story. That's insane.
yeah.
You did his knee. He got a
And he said, because you said something in a board meeting about that you don't believe in value-based care. I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you even talking about? I'm like, I think at the time they wanted to not pay the doctors like a certain part of and hold money back without like coming up with a whole system, I was like, you took something very small and minute out of context, and you're gonna. I mean, it wasn't his. I've known him for so long and know how he was not how little he was thought of by the administration, that I knew for a fact that he was not making any decisions. I said to him, you're going to tell me that you're making a decision that can potentially destroy this health system? I said, I could resign today, and that would be 30% of your operating room volume out the door. And I was like, I just don't think that they would give you that power. Not power. They don't care about you.
Yeah.
So this whole thing, so that's where it started. The decline, and my group rallied around me, and they started a petition. One of the guys was on the board, and he stood up. He goes, you never fire the coach when the team's winning. Why are you doing this? And there was no reason. They didn't have a good reason. And this petition, they found the petition before it got out, and instead of saying, okay, this group is hurting, let's sit down and talk to them, they just ignored it. And they just said, get in line,
Really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, personally that crushes, but tell me a bit, like, personally, man, like that, like, how did you?
I mean, you question your worth.
Yeah.
I mean, all you could do is, you sit down, you say to yourself, it's not me, it's them. I didn't, which is a normal reaction. I mean, obviously, probably I was. I mean, I'm a very caring person, like not only in my personal life, but even professionally, like to the people I work with, I'm very, like I buy lunch constantly. Not that that's a big thing, but it's a big thing to the
it is.
Staff. It's huge. And it just shows that you care about them. And I don't yell in the operating room. I'm very focused on what I'm doing. And I think, there was so much support for me that I think it made certain people in administration uncomfortable, where they felt like they had to knock me down a peg. And to the point where they appointed the guy that I recruited at the end of 2004, one of the spine surgeons. But, he had been somebody who, first of all, never did his charts, was always delinquent, had been written up for delinquencies multiple times, just wasn't a good leader. Looked at as a leader, was looked at as somebody who just does enough to get by. He was a spine surgeon, but, surgeries can't get approved unless you finish your note. And there were people calling and saying, hey, I've been waiting for 3 months for this surgery. I need Dr. Fleming to sign, we could X that out. But we needed to sign his note, bottom line.
Yeah. You just need to sign the note.
Hey, I'm not saying that's not true. Yeah. But but once again, it wasn't anything against him per se. It was the fact that that's who they were replacing me with. Somebody who did not have the vision. And like I said to them, I said, this is my career. Yeah. For everybody else in this office, it's their job. I'm the one who's made this my passion. I'm the one who's, driving in the snow 3 hours each way when it's bad, showing up no matter what. I'm the one who's making sure that we're, successful. I was like, this is, everybody else just punched the clock, and they all knew that, and they were fine with it, but I wasn't fine. That's not what I wanted. So
how did you deal with this on a personal level? Like, what tools did you use?
I didn't deal with it well. What I probably should have done was what I said. a little while ago. I probably should have just said, you don't want me and appreciate my sacrifice. It's time for me to move on, you know? But here I am, 20 years in my career, not knowing how much more I'm going to, work. And they're building the facility that I've been dreaming of. You go along to get along. I just kind of bit my tongue, and I knew in my heart I was leaving. I mean, right when they did that, and the lack of honesty, if they would have came out and said, look, respect, but just being honest, like the people who made the decision, the CEO should have been in the room with me telling me I had gotten, he had called me, it was like 4 years before for the job. He said, hey, I really want this job. He had been there before. He's like, I want to come back. And we did, and I did everything to help him get the job. And that's a CEO conversation. It's not the president of the medical group.
100%.
The medical group was like a fictitious thing. It was only there so that the hospital had a tax ID protection. It's just a weird. But anyway, But yeah, I knew then I was leaving, and I just didn't know when and how. But I didn't want to just walk out. I wanted to make sure that because I had 2 kids. I wasn't gonna walk out and not know. I mean, it's hard when you leave as a doctor. When you leave one facility, it's not like you could just go across the street and work for somebody else. You got to get credentialed. You got to go through all this crap. It takes 9 months, 6 to 9 months to get up and running. So, but
okay, so we're getting close to wrapping up. 4 years, you've been doing it on your own.
No, so I'm employed. I'm still employed. So I left.
Whoa.
I left and I joined Ohio Health in Columbus.
Okay.
So I joined Ohio Health because I'm a wimp, and I didn't feel strong enough to be on my own. I didn't realize that I actually had developed a brand over those 20 years.
For sure.
That there were people who knew what I did. If I helped donate money to build a gym in one of the high schools, they knew that it was me. And all these other things that I would do, this was out recently. I had a woman in my office see me for her shoulder, and not a week before, her husband had a sudden, massive PE and died, and they had small kids. And she's in my office, and I feel terrible. And I just said to my nurse, I said, I had just gotten back from Disney World. I said, we're sending them to Disney World. We're sending her kids, and her mother-in-law, and we're sending that, all expenses paid, the full concierge service when they get there. Just to do something, And people, so people knew that that's who I was, and that's what I did. Yeah. So I could have walked out the door, and I probably could just put a sign across the street, and I would have been fine. But I wanted to, I didn't have confidence, as busy as I was, I just didn't have the confidence to step out on my own. And so I've been with Ohio Health now for 4 years, but now, baby, it's getting close. But,
love that.
But you said something before about giving back to the community. It's not what you give, it's the fact that you give. Whether it's your time. Yes. Fortunately, I have resources. Just yesterday, last night, they're closing the paper mill in Chillicothe, Ohio. It's 200 years it's been there. 800 families are being, going to lose their jobs. And I do a lot of work with the Chillicothe Paints, which is a wood bat baseball team for the college kids. And I just talked to the owner, Brian Wickline. I just said, hey, I want to give back to these people. I said, let's do $500 a family. Let's do 20 families. Let's give, and we'll just raffle it off. Like I said, it's really not about what you give. It's the fact that you do, and there were some people who Brett Miller, I know you see him online. He saw my post. He reached out. He said, I want to give $1,000 from Hurt. So that was 2 more families that got money. And then somebody else that I know from Southern Ohio reached out and said, hey, I want to give 2 more families. So we had 24 families that walked away, with probably enough money to pay at least for groceries for a period of time, or electric bill and some, whatever it is. It's just, it's something. And it just makes them know that they're not alone.
Man, you're giving them hope.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a community is. You have an S on your chest, and it doesn't have to be flying or anything, but when you give hope and you're a symbol in the community where everybody knows you show up and you give back. I've been following you for so long and what you do. Your Saturday clinic, you don't hear that anywhere. You give back to the community. Your sourdough bread. Yeah. How many things you sponsored, the gymnasiums, the sports banner. I'm just really privileged to be able to learn from you and be able to kind of mold my life of how I do want to give back as well too, and like how I want to be able to be received and help people. And I think that's the biggest thing is like we lift where we stand, and then you're going to be a lot stronger as a team because everybody's going to want to see you succeed.
I mean, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, when people follow you, you know you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
20 or 30 people followed us from my old hospital, and they're still here.
That's incredible.
And they're still following. And it's not because I'm just doing my shit.
Yeah, man. You're doing a great job. And I think it just shows the bread is in the pudding. And I think the proof is in the pudding. You're getting me emotional. No, it's just, I think the meaning of life is connection. It's showing people that you care, showing people, like everybody just wants to be heard, wants to be seen. And I think if we can do that on some scale, if we have some kind of capacity where we have a platform where we can help people, I think that's where we're going to go further. And like, that's where we're going to be able to be happy with and look back and see like, hey, it's not the dollars. Like I said, it's how many people did I help along the way? And how many people helped me along the way? And how many people did I ask for help? Because asking for help is another sign of like support, because you know how hard it is to ask for help. And man, I just want to let you know, like you do have all the confidence in the world. You need to be able to do what you need to do because everybody's watching. And I think you are a bright light in your community, not just your community, but even on social media and your platform and what you do. It's so unique and different. And I just want to like congratulate you. And like, I really appreciate your honesty and your authenticity because it's very rare, and especially in our profession, for people to be authentic.
Yeah. And look, like I said, I've followed you, and I've, you know, like you said, 5 years ago, you and I would not be sitting on this crying. I mean, shit.
No.
I'd be like, dude, you only sold 200 hips this week? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know, right?
You know, but this is better. I mean, I'd rather live with the emotion on my sleeve and feel that you know, that it makes you feel alive. I'd rather feel that than not. You know, like, what are we here for? If you can't make your kids better, if you can't make the people in your lives better, if you can't just be a good person and do the right thing. And yeah, like you said, we all do bad things. You know, as long as you identify it, work through it, own it, and then move on. You know?
I always give the listeners a reflection questions. Before I do that, do you have any kind of last thoughts that you want to drop in or give anybody that they're listening to?
I have to come clean with you, you know, because I still have not read your book because I don't read. I did read the first chapter, and I am making a promise to you. It is July 22nd.
Okay.
By August 22nd, I will be done with the book. Now, and I won't get the audio version. I will read the book. And look, like I said, when I got it, I started reading it. I just, you know, look, I still get up at 2:30 in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm just tired, you know?
Yeah, no, I get it. And it's hard. If it's not Audible, and I know I got to be able to get the Audible out. Everybody's been asking. But
look, I came clean, like bought the book, like right when it was available. Like
I know.
And I was ready to post how I finished the book.
Yeah.
And it sits on my nightstand, so I see it every day. But
no, I appreciate
my promise to you is that by August 22nd, that book, you and I are going to get back on, even a phone call. I'm going to talk through some stuff.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. The support means a lot. All right, guys, wrapping up, I just want to give you guys some reflection questions throughout the day, throughout the night, or as you go to bed, to be able to just ponder and be able to give yourself better mindset. So where in your life are you showing up on autopilot? When could you be more present? What pain have you been ignoring that might actually be trying to guide you? Are you chasing someone else's definition of success or living your own? And when was the last time you paused and asked yourself, is this still aligned with who I'm becoming? Guys, this is the Caffaro Way. Really appreciate Brian Cohen to come on and give us a story. I'm glad we could be able to be emotional and show our authenticity. I think the world needs a lot more of it. And man, I'm just super grateful for your time. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, thanks so much.